Where should I even begin with this piece? So the C-sharp minor Prelude, Opus 3 No. 2, is the most famous piece by Rachmaninoff. It's written by a 19-year-old composer. He had just finished the Moscow Conservatory. I mean, most of us start a conservatory when we're 19 years old. Rachmaninoff graduates. So it's part of these 5 fantasy pieces, Morceaux de Fantaisie. Number 1 is also very nice, lovely, solemn elegy in E-flat minor. And this is number 2. And it was super successful from the first performance and onwards, really, for generations. Even in Rachmaninoff's own lifetime, it was so popular that the audience demanded it as an encore when Rachmaninoff played recitals, because he was a great pianist too. The audience would just shout C-sharp at the end. And eventually Rachmaninoff himself grew tired of the piece, and in a weak moment he said he regretted that he composed it. But I think he didn't really mean it, and we're happy that he did compose it and we can enjoy it 100 years later. So what makes it so effective as a concert piece? Basically, it has everything you could wish from a short piano piece in just 4 minutes. And I think the website Classic FM summarizes it best. They write, "It begins eerily with solemn and almost funereal chords, but the rate at which it warms up and becomes dementedly intense is just incredible." It also has the nickname The Bells of Moscow. I'm not so familiar with that title. Maybe it was more common 100 years ago, and maybe more in the US than in Europe. But anyway, you can easily imagine these, the low voice, that's some kind of bells, funeral bells. And there's even a story that goes with this music. It's a dream Rachmaninoff is supposed to have that inspired the music. And I'm going to tell the story in the end of the video, but it's not really verified as a true inspiration. It's more like a rumor. But for now, I'm going to go through the music and give my interpretation of it, which is slightly more abstract than the dream. And before I do that, a special shout out to my Patreon sponsor M. Valente, who I know is a Rachmaninoff fan. So we start with these dark bells down here. Kick off the piece with a bang. And the way I see it is that we have these 2 voices that are in a dialogue, and they're interwoven with each other for the whole first section here. So the first one is this motif. Dark bells, maybe about death, foreboding, destiny, fate. Let's call it fate. And then we have an answer in the higher register. And then we get the dialogue. So every other note is a motive, and this it's much more light, much more life and a little bit love and hope. Let's call it hope. So it's a dialogue between fate and hope. And the fate motive is always coming back. And then it's just a little higher. But then it comes back down. And with the hope motive, it's very chromatic. That's the most significant feature of this piece, I think. All this chromaticism. So it's just E, D sharp, D. It's a chromatic descent. And then here, this goes from D7 to G sharp 7. Kind of weird voicing, but this is what we call a tritone substitute. So a D7 to G sharp 7, or if we change the voicing, we notice that 2 of the notes are the same. These 2 notes. This is like a harmonic backdoor to change in a really cool way, because this is a tritone in the D made 7, and if we transpose a tritone, we get the same notes. That's the beauty of the tritone, the symmetrical. So when we transpose the whole chord, the D to the G sharp, that's how we get the same. And now together with the Fate theme. And here is like hope is trying to pull up Fate. And it's succeeding. And we can enjoy this. That's the love. Just a note here, if you have a score with a D natural on this chord, burn it, because it's not right. Or you can just fill in a D sharp, because it's supposed to be a D sharp. Even though there are a lot of editions with a D natural. Because, I mean, it would work, but it sounds like Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And the D sharp is more right with Rachmaninoff's intention, I believe so. And now we get to develop a bit with this motif. And we're back. And the Fate theme is back down. And now it's like hope is trying to persuade Fate again, but this time it's in vain. And now even hope is starting to have doubt that it's really gonna get somewhere. And here Fate is slightly changed with going from underneath. It's not much, but it's just about enough to keep things interesting. And now hope is really pulled down in this register. And here ends the first section basically. So now we get the Agitato section, and in one way Rachmaninoff just continues with this register. So we get, it's just the same voices that we have here. And now it's more motoric, and yeah, it starts to stir up and something is rumbling and brewing down here. It's a lot of fun to play. So it's actually it's a peculiar sound, these two voices. It's just a fourth, perfect fourth in parallel motion, chromatic descent. This for me gives this macabre feeling, like skeletons dancing. Also, it's integrated in a more thick, romantic texture with these chords and a lot of pedal, so you just get a really nice sound texture. And also the tempo relations here. If we look at the end of this section, where we get the return of the first theme, these big chords, the way they are written, here it's on half notes every chord, but it's the same idea as when they are on eighth notes. So here in the beginning every chord is on eighth notes, so I think that should be kind of equal. So eighth notes in the A section should be equal to a half note in this section. So we will get, so it's kind of a doubling of the speed. But we also start slightly slower than that, and then the agitato is to increase the tempo. Basically everything increases here. The tempo, the dynamic, and the register goes higher and higher up, so increases the energy all over this place. Now this diminished chord, the tension friction, yeah, it's coming down for a while just to start over to go up again. Now the climax, forte fortissimo. This is called martellato, when you are hammering like this. And now we reach the return of the first theme, but it is transformed. The character is transformed. It's the same material, but forte fortissimo, pesante is heavy. And this is amazing. Rachmaninoff needs 4 staves to write out. Normally it's 2. Like sometimes in Debussy or Ravel you get 3 staves, but here you have 4 staves because it's so big chord jumps. Now it's transformed. The Fate theme is kind of the same, just fuller and more adamant. But the Hope theme, hope is turned into desperation here. Just a quick note here, when we get to this chord, it's supposed to be, I don't know, it's supposed to be on one beat, but it's impossible. That's the big sketch of Igundisman and Joe when they have Rachmaninoff as big hand, because it's not possible to play. So you need to play this before, but I would really say to try to be really quick on that, but more importantly, after this, let this be the one, so you don't, because then it's hard to grasp what rhythm it is. So clear on the first beat, and then same here. We finally reach the finishing chords, and here there's another tempo relation thing. I want to feel it as a very natural progression, so I play it actually double speed, so every chord is an eighth note as the same, and then I do a long return. And this is the way Rachmaninoff himself plays it. There are recordings, and he kind of go a lot between different tempos. This plays as well, when you have, like, he's speeding up there, and I think this is the style of romantic music. There is room for this kind of going back and forth in the tempo, so I think this feels more natural here. But then of course a ritardando. This is the final try for hope. Maybe hope isn't dead. Maybe we can change fate. No, I'm sorry. It's in vain. And this last octave, I like to take it so you can play louder on the lower note. And now it's story time. So in this dream that Rachmaninoff had, he was at a funeral, You can hear the funeral bells in the beginning of the music. And he goes forward to look at the coffin in the funeral. And he looks inside and he sees it's himself lying in the coffin. And this is starting to stir up a lot of worry. That is the Agitato section. And it culminates in a fierce conflict and denial of the fact that he is actually a ghost in the dream. So that's the climax, but then ultimately he accepts that fact and it goes back to the same character as the piece starts with in the end. But I mean, as I said, take it with a grain of salt. The music is so good, it works both with this story and also without it as just music. Or if you have other ideas like I do, maybe leave a comment how you feel about all this below. Thanks for watching Sonata Secrets. I'm Henrik Kilhamn and I see you in another video.